everybody. Cheers and welcome to this week's episode of Trades Lady Happy Hour. I am super excited this week to be joined by a helicopter technician. This is a new one for Trades Lady Happy Hour. We've had all sorts of different trades represented here with women from all over the different trade, automotive and adjacent kind of trades related industries, but helicopter is not one of them. So I'm really excited to be joined by Faith. She is relatively new into being a helicopter technician. She's got a couple of years under her belt. Grew up wrenching, but never, really into this, and kind of was drawn to aviation mechanics and decided it's something she wanted to do and pursue. So I'm really excited to meet her and hear her story and learn about how she ended up down this path and how it's all going. She runs a really cool Instagram page with a ton of really cool information. So I've been following her for a little bit. I've not met her yet, so I'll be learning right along with you guys. For those of you who are new, this is a weekly live where each week I meet with a different woman in the automotive and adjacent trades. So generally it started out automotive. We have welders and body girls and painters and all that sorts of stuff within the automotive realm, but also branching out in a little bit into airplanes and now helicopters, and we've done a couple of other kind of adjacent blacksmithing, that kind of stuff. So a ton of fun. Each week we meet with somebody else, and the purpose of it is really to share their stories, to celebrate women in the trades, to raise awareness about how many amazing women there are out there totally kicking butt and doing awesome things, just out there living their lives and being successful in these trades and these careers. So it's to celebrate them and hear their stories and share them with you guys so you can get to know them a little bit as well. It is a ton of fun for those who've been following along for a while. I appreciate you guys coming back and tuning in each week. So without further ado, I'm going to see if Faith has joined in on the conversation yet. I do see her send you an invite, Faith, and hopefully this should go smoothly, assuming technology obliges us. Let's see. I sent an invite. If you're there, there you are.
Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Great.
Good. My head is getting cut off a little bit. I'm going to adjust my camera. All right. Hi. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and join me on this craziness.
Of course. Of course.
Are you still at work right now?
No.
Oh.
Home. I work 4/10, so it's a little hectic sometimes, and it depends on what's going on in the shop, whether or not I have to stay late, but not this week.
Gotcha. Very nice. Well, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself real quickly to the folks that are following along, and just a quick little bit about who you are, where you are from, and what you do, and then we'll dive into all the good stuff.
Yeah, so my name is Faith. I have been a helicopter mechanic now for about 2.5 years. I actually went to SIU Carbondale, Illinois. So I did their 4-year degree there. I actually have a bachelor's in aviation technology.
Oh, wow.
And then I specialized in helicopters. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with helicopters. So right after school, this is my first job that I've been at. I'm at Helicopters Incorporated, which is in St. Louis, Missouri, on E&G helicopters. So
I no idea anything about helicopters, so like zero about I've been in one once. That's about the extent of my knowledge. So what does E&G helicopters mean?
So a lot of times helicopters have special outlets on what those helicopters are doing. So you'll have medical helicopters that are like on top of hospitals. You'll have helicopters that are for transport, for doctors, for organs, for different things. I have a puppy. It's getting in like 2 seconds.
Yes. Gotta love it. Puppies. Are you going to show us the puppy at least?
1 second. He is a stinker.
Of course. Oh my goodness, look at that face.
He is
That is
but yes.
fantastic.
So
My cat is probably going to make an appearance at some point here as well. The minute the camera comes on, he thinks it's time for his cameo.
100 ice cubes and like toys and all kinds of stuff, but he wants everything I have. So
Of course, he's a puppy. You got your hands full. All right, so Angie, helicopters, you were explaining what that is.
yes, so the outlet or the area that the helicopters that I work on are used for is ENG, which stands for electronic news gathering. So there's basically we lease them to news companies. So whenever you turn on the 5 o'clock news and you're seeing a high-speed chase or maybe a fire or just anything that has a lot of aerial shots, usually that's us. So we own quite a bit around the country. We have a lot of different bases in different states, a lot of the major cities.
Interesting.
But yeah, so it's kind of a niche thing. A lot of times when you hear people say that they work helicopters, a lot of times they are those medical helicopters, or they'll be forest fires. A lot of them fight forest fires on the West Coast. And then I'm trying to think of what else. Like I said, a lot of times it's medical. Sometimes heavy lifting too. You'll see them doing like the power lines or different things. A lot of people have seen those videos where they touch, discharge it, and they work on the power lines. But usually, sometimes even logging too, you'll see them lifting like heavy like that. But so side by side with photojournalists and pilots. So
that's awesome.
Kind of odd, but yeah.
No, that's really cool. So your company, the company that you work with, actually, they own the helicopters and lease them out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So we actually own the helicopter, and we actually also provide the pilot, and also provide me whenever they need help or whenever something's going on with a helicopter. And we provide the entire thing. It's almost like a package type of deal. And then the news station will, a lot of times, they will teach or send a photojournalist to school to learn how to operate that camera equipment. So, and then we work side by side with them. So they work for the news companies typically, and then it's us. So, but that's usually how.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Is that typical for helicopter shops, I guess? Like, it's not like you're an independent shop that's bringing in customers' helicopters. So is that pretty typical? It's
kind of niche because a lot of times you'll see like shops will just provide maintenance. So sometimes there'll be companies that say, hey, I have a helicopter, it's due this inspection. And a lot of times they'll outsource it. So we're kind of unique in the sense that we do everything in-house. So it's a little bit different, but it creates a pretty nice bond with our pilots. Because we're constantly working with them, you're seeing them. But yeah, we're kind of niche in that sense. Sorry, he got into something.
It's a full-time job having a puppy. It's like having a baby that never grows up.
But yeah, so we, like I said, we work pretty closely with the pilots, the photojournalists, and providing maintenance. So my job is pretty awesome in the sense that I get to go from base to base whenever something comes due. So some cities we see more than others just because they're flying more. And some bases are so big that we even have full-time mechanics at those bases. So St. Louis is our main hub, but we have 2 very large bases in New York, as well as San Francisco. I'm trying to think. There's a couple that have like multiple helicopters, so they've got technicians there that are full-time.
So do you go fly with them as well?
Yes. So that's one of the really cool perks is whenever a helicopter is done with maintenance, depending on what we've done to it, they will usually send a mechanic up to do a test flight, ensure everything's working, or even if a pilot's got a concern and they're like, hey, I can't create this on the ground, or I'm trying to describe this, can you just come fly with me? So, but it's really fun whenever we actually take the main rotor off and we put it back on. We have to have an hour of time on it before we do a torque check. So usually that's kind of sightseeing. So whenever I go to a major city, they're like, hey, we have to do a torque check. Do you want to go like take a tour?
You're like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, do you have your pilot's license as well? Is that something that you have interest in doing?
I do have interest in doing that. I don't at the moment. What stinks is a lot of my pilots don't have their additional certification to teach me. So to be a pilot, you have to have certain ratings to fly certain aircraft, and you also have to have a certain certificate to teach as well. So a lot of the guys I fly with, they don't have a need to have that certificate. So even though they've been doing this for so long, and they are probably like some of the best teachers ever, I can't actually log it. So that's the only catch. I've begged a couple of them to get it. I'm like, please, I guys so much. That would be so cool, but there's no need for them to get it, and it's kind of expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's so many questions I want to ask you because I know so little about the helicopter industry and how all of that works, but we've kind of gone further down the path. I want to start back in history a little bit. How did you wind up where you're at? Why helicopters? How did you end up there?
So when I was wrenching with my dad, I knew that I wanted to do something along these lines. I just didn't know what. And I talked to a lot of my dad's friends and a lot of people that he worked with, and like, there's so much stuff that you could apply this to. They were like, you should look into other things, just because they've done it for so long and they really enjoy it. But they were like, if you're not sure, if this is exactly what it is you're wanting to do, because like I said, my dad did boats. That was kind of like his side hobby.
Okay.
But I was like, I just don't know what else, like planes, trains, automobiles, like what's so a good friend of mine, her mom worked for American Airlines.
Okay.
She worked actually third shift in Dallas. Even though she lived in Missouri, she would commute
Oh, wow.
to Dallas. And so she would tell me about it. She's like, you should seriously look into it. So I started looking at colleges, and I actually considered going into the military as well, just because I wasn't sure where I was going to be able to get my hands on something, bigger and better. I'm like, bush planes would be cool. What about like anything that's in the scope at that point, like F-18s? Like, can I work? Yeah. So I started looking into it, and it always seemed like helicopters were talked about like they were so foreign, like it was just so out of the picture. Like, there's a lot of people in aviation, but there's not a lot of people in helicopters. And so always like, they made it seem almost like it was kind of an elite group, or like they just were like, oh yeah, those guys are crazy. Like, you can't exactly glide down in a helicopter. Like, those guys are like, they got a screw loose. Everybody always would joke,
Right.
It's a really intense job. So I'm like, that would be just such a thrill, something really cool to do. So I started looking at schools and in the military, but I wasn't sure. I'm like, there's no way. I knew nothing about college or going to school. My parents didn't go to school, so I'm like, I don't even know how to look into getting into this. And so I went to my guidance counselor, and she's like, there's 2 schools nearby if you want to go check them out. And a lot of schools offer an associate's program or an 18-month program, to where you can get your license and get a degree kind of attached with it. And so I contemplated doing that. And once I toured SIU, there was actually a really awesome tour guide, and he was like, hey, someone told me on your interest sheet that you might be interested in helicopters. You probably didn't know. We don't advertise it like a lot, but we have a helicopters program. We're one of a few in the country, like only a handful. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah. He's like, if you want, I can go grab the key and we can just walk through there. He goes, I didn't take helicopters, so I don't know much about it. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we walked through, and it was awesome. And then they were kind of talking about the program, some of the professors, and the only female professor in the entire maintenance program was the helicopters instructor. And
Interesting.
Yes, which was super unique. So her and I really jived when I met her. She's awesome. Her name's Karen Johnson. She still works there. If any ladies watching this are interested, go take a She's awesome. But yeah, after everybody kind of seeing what the school had to offer, I'm like, this doesn't seem like a typical like school setting. Like, I'm not one of those people that like textbook, like flashcards. That's not me. I never enjoyed that part of school. I took tech in school, so I did automotive classes. But yeah, once I toured it and started taking classes, I was like, it's not a typical school experience. I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do. So it was all 4 years. It was kind of unique in the sense that I didn't have homework, but if something broke in the shop, I was there till it was fixed. So it was kind of a trade-off. So I still had
Yeah.
tests, different things, and exams I had to pass, to make sure I was retaining what I needed to. But
Yeah.
much different than most of my friends that I made on campus. Like their experience was much different than mine. But I enjoyed
Yeah.
that. That's the only reason I was there for all 4 years and finished out was because it was so cool.
That there's so much that's amazing about all of that story. Like there's so much that's incredible that you had a guidance counselor that actually encouraged you into exploring these different schools. That there's a school that has helicopter training. Like I've never even heard of that. Um, like I just absolutely love everything about this, and that you had a female helicopter instructor. Like this is so awesome. so, so you took shop classes in high school as well, like mechanical, car, automotive, that kind of stuff. Is that?
Yeah, it was offered at it was a community college, but they had classes for high schoolers, and you could go, and they had
Oh,
like
okay.
trade, they had welding, they had auto body, and then mechanics. And so I took automotive mechanics with actually my friends, the mom that I was telling you about that worked at American. Her daughter and I were the only girls in the class, and so we took tech together. She's actually
Nice.
in the course now, and she works in the transportation unit, so she works on a little bit of everything. But
Nice.
but yeah, so it's kind of funny how we both ended up doing very
Yeah.
different in the same type of blue collar career field we knew that we were going to go into. We both stuck with it and loved it. So
I love that. It's so encouraging to me because, I still hear so many stories about guidance counselors who discourage not just women, but like discourage kids in general from going to classes like these and taking them in high school, let alone going after high school to a trade type college or program. So it's so cool to hear that you had such encouragement throughout all of that.
yeah, they say everything happens for a reason, and literally it all panned out so well. I literally, like looking back, how willy nilly I was about doing just anything related. I'm like, I could do that, or that looks kind of cool. And ending up where I did, because I talked about it a little bit when I was younger, even before I took tech classes. I'm like, how cool would it be to be a helicopter tech? And so I kind of looked into
Interesting.
jobs and like what was available, and a lot of things that I found when looking for a job basically said like there's a lot of aviation in different parts of the country, and you will always have a job if you're in the aviation field. However, you may have to move to that job. So there's a lot of
Sure.
travel involved, not even in my day to day, but sometimes people, if a job is offered somewhere else, or if a company combines, or different things. But I'm very blessed that helicopters are all over the place, and if to happen that there's an application for me just about anywhere. So, but yeah, there's a lot of jobs further south and on the west coast as well. Bell, actually, I work on Bell helicopters, which is a certain model, or I guess a brand almost. It's
Man-
almost like,
Manufacturer.
yeah, like General Motors type of thing. Like, but I work on Bell helicopters, and I work on 3 different models. But the manufacturer of Bell is further south. They're actually in Texas as well as Maribel, Canada, which is extremely far north. But in the States, that's why Texas is so huge for aviation, especially helicopters. So,
That makes sense.
but yeah, there's jobs all over the place, which is very assuring whenever you get out of school, especially as a tech or someone with a degree. I know a lot of young people are getting out of school and are finding it's hard to find a job, especially when
Yeah.
and they're pushed saying you're not going to make it unless you have a degree, and then you get this degree, you're like, okay, now what? What's the next thing? So I always encourage people, I'm like, the 4-year program was awesome for me and it worked out for me, but you do not have to do that to do what I do. So but I try to tell people that all the time.
Do you feel like it helped you in getting your first job? Like what was getting a first job experience like? And do you feel like that degree helped you get in the door?
Very much so. Only because no other school really has helicopters, and it's one of those things where you need experience to find a job. To find a job, you need experience, type of deals. And so, just for me to even say, "Hey, I know what type of helicopter this is. I know nomenclature and where things are." People were like, "That's more than most techs your
Oh
age."
well.
So they were like, because most people don't know anything about helicopters really, except for just a few little tips.
Self included.
I didn't either, trust me. It was even crazier to find out just how much in my automotive classes, how much like those principles and theories apply. Like
I'd imagine, yeah.
I'm sitting next to people that are, twice my age, that were in the military or have kids, or just wanted to start college and they were later on in life, and they were like, I was thinking I was going to be, behind the bar because I didn't have any family in aviation, and then once I got into this, I was like, wait, I know a lot. I actually know a good amount. And like, drum brakes and disc brakes and just like swapping engines and transmissions. I'm like, this is not bad. Like I'm actually pretty equipped already. So that was really, really cool to see. And I try to tell people all the time, I'm like, if you have an interest in this, do not think you need to have, like, you're at level 0 with everybody else, which is super. Yeah. I didn't know how that was going to be when I got in there, because there's some people that are like, well, my grandpa, my dad, my great grandpa, my uncles, they're all mechanics. They've all worked for Boeing for years. And I'm like,
right.
Like, that's not me. So, but yeah, it's definitely it's a cool experience to see how tech school and just working on things and just really familiarizing yourself, like I said, with theory and different maintenance practices and how it applies to more than just cars.
Yeah, I feel like that's such an important point. Like, the transferability of skills and knowledge and all of that. But like, I was just having this conversation with somebody at the shop today about how, there's this kind of preconceived notion about what it means to go be a mechanic or to get into the automotive industry or whatever like area of the industry you want to get into. And yet there's so many different jobs, so many different areas, so many different ways that can look, and how it's kind of unfortunate because I think people see that one thing and they're like, oh, that's what being a mechanic looks like. But the cool thing about doing what we do is, like you said, you can go from cars to boats to helicopters to probably anything you set your mind to. And it's all kind of, if you know the theory, it's all kind of the same thing. So you can always get a job anywhere doing anything, which is amazing. And I wish more people realized how awesome that is.
Yeah, it's super.
I guess
I always
gotta say, you've got to, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, is it lagging a little?
A little bit. Yeah. Go ahead though.
Sorry. But yeah, like I said, I try to tell people all the time, like, if, when people are just kind of tired of the same motions or doing, the same things, I'm like, you can do what I do. Like, I wasn't some crazy person that took everything apart and put it back together. Like, some people are like, I've been tinkering since I was a child or this or that. And I'm like, that wasn't me either. Like, I wasn't one of those kids. I mean, I took interest because my dad did, and it was kind of one of those things. And I'm like, this actually is a pretty cool job and could open some doors. But I watched one of your videos a couple weeks ago, and there was a young woman that was saying she was a hairdresser. Like, I love hearing when people say that, when they're like, oh, I do this, but I don't know if I like it. I'm like, do something else. Like, you should try it. It's not, I promise it's not rocket science. If I can do it, you can do it. It's to see, especially young people and women, getting into, like you said, trades. It's really cool.
I gotta say, your dad just piped up as in the comments and said, "That's my little girl, proud dad moment."
He shared it on Facebook. Everybody was pinging my phone. I'm like, uh-oh.
Oh, I love it. Definitely proud papa there. That's awesome. So I assume dad was very supportive. Family's been supportive of you coming down this career path.
Oh yeah, extremely so. I've actually had a couple family members and like friends of family members be like, hey, like I have a young daughter and she, I take her with me to the shop all the time. Or it's really cool because on my Instagram, I'll have people like dads will send me pictures of their little girl, like sitting like on the landing gear, and they're like, yeah, and did this today, or, took her on her first flight and different things like that. So, but it's really cool. But my family's been more than supportive. At first they were kind of like, okay, like when I talked about doing like, all right. And then I remember, I think it was my first flight at my job. I sent everybody a picture because I think we hit like the 5 feet mark or something, and I hadn't been up in one yet. And they were like, no way. Everybody was like, that's so cool. And so sometimes when I get those hour-long flights, I'll actually buzz by my parents' houses or their work, and I'm like, hey, like, your head outside, and they're like, "Nuh-uh," and they're out there. Everybody's like waving. It's pretty cool. But yeah, they've all been super supportive, and so. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So.
What was the experience like in school? Were you, I mean, obviously you had a female instructor, which is amazing. Were you one of the only women in the program? Were there other female students?
Of course there were a lot more males than there were females, but in my class actually had the most females that they'd seen come through in quite a while. So I think the year above me had one female. The one before that had 2. Mine had 5. So they said that, yeah, which was really cool to see. We also have a flight program too, and there, of course, are more young men than there are women in that as well. But there seem to be a lot more young women in flight than there are the maintenance side. Okay. But they were talking about, I haven't asked my professor, the one that I'm still pretty close with, but how many more girls have come through the program. But they said they'd seen kind of an influx. And so the school does a pretty good job of advertising and basically showing the different demographics when they come through the hangar. And so me and another female that were in the program, they used to interview us all the time. So it was funny. I'm like, people are going to get the idea that it's like all girls in this program. It's a couple of us, but there were 2 other girls that actually did helicopters, which was super cool. So we were all in that together. We actually went to the Heli Expo together, which was awesome. So every year, HAI, which is Helicopters Association International, puts on a I wouldn't call it a show. It is a little bit of a show, but people from different parts of the helicopter industry all come together, and they just basically showcase what they do. But we went there, and that was really cool to see. There was helicopter companies from New Zealand. There was a couple from Russia. There was a couple from all walks of aviation, helicopter related, which was really cool to see. But there were actually a lot of women there, which was really cool. There's a booth, it's called Whirly Girls. It's all female helicopter pilots. And
oh, how cool.
That it's a whole organization dedicated to women helicopter pilots. And so we went over there and chatted with them, and it was really cool to see. But yeah, school, SIU, the program, like I said, they're getting more through from what they could see when we were in there. But yeah, but having a female professor was like, I mean, just remember telling other people, because you meet kids from other schools, and there would be competitions or different things, or I forget, with extracurricular like groups, and so you would like talk to schools, and they'd be like, "You have a female professor? Like, that's so cool!" Or like, "There's 5 of you guys? Like, it's only." Or, you know, me and one other girl, or so.
Yeah, but that's impressive.
Yeah, it was really cool though. But yeah.
It's interesting, and I was going to ask you about that, because it sounds from everything you're saying, like either you just landed in like just the right places at just the right times, but like that it's been a really positive experience, and like just all sorts of opportunity, and being a woman didn't seem to make a difference one way or the other. I was kind of curious if that was like the helicopter world in general, or just the particular school you wound up at and your experiences thus far. Do you feel like it's kind of throughout the industry with helicopters?
So far, it's been fantastic. I remember when I started school, I'm like, I didn't know how this was going to go. I almost kind of toughened myself up, thinking like, okay, like, you're going to be the only one, like, you're just going to have to get used to it, like, it's not a big deal. And I had already, like, in tech school and high school been through that. Sorry. And everything, you know, like I had, sorry, multitasking here.
That's all right. Puppies are very demanding. So for anybody who's just joining, the reason why she keeps walking around the house is because she's got an adorable little puppy who's getting into, we go.
Yeah.
Getting into all sorts of, oh my God, look at that face.
Yeah, he's a mess, but by the program, I kind of amped myself up. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to go. Like, I'm tough. I know I'm thick-skinned. Like, I'll be fine. Well, then I got there, and I'm like, everything's fine. Like, all these people are super helpful, reassuring. Everyone's like, good on you. Like, you know, there were, like I said, there were guys I was in class with that are like my dad's age, and they're like, can my daughter talk to you? Like, this is so cool. Like, they were more helpful. They weren't really biased. And then I kind of thought that too. I'm like, what if this is just the school? Everyone's in a school atmosphere.
Right.
Everyone is just kind of like, well, this is just school, you know? Because I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, the real world, like, work is going to be different. It's going to be so different. So same thing. After school, I'm like, okay, like, you're tough. You got it. Like, not a big deal. You're going to be the only one. Like, already knew all this. And then I get into work and I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, everyone is just super laid back. There's not, I mean, there are upcoming like young people, but a lot of the people that I work with are like my dad's age. And so the dynamic is very different. They're like, hey kid, like, did you learn this? Have you used this before? Hey, I bought this extra tool. Like, I've had it for years in my box. You can have it. Like,
So like they're very paternal to you, very
and they all the tips and tricks. They've been doing it for so long. And that's kind of how it was in school too. Cause I was learning how to safety wire or like do maintenance procedures that I'd never seen done before. It's only an aviation thing. And I would have people, you know, like, I'd be struggling trying to figure it out. And then there's a guy like, hey, this is way easier. Like, try to do it like this. And I'm like, those are the guys you want to like hang out with, because they're the ones that know how to do it right the first time when you're struggling. And so work has been the same exact way. They'll be like, hey, this is a unique tool, or I made this, you can make one just like it, like, you know, different things. So it's been a really positive experience all the way around. Like I said, I don't know if I just got lucky, but I different faces and everyone kind of has the same mentality and the same attitude. So it's been super positive. And that's something I try to show through my page as well, that I get to travel to places and I get to do what I do, and it's fun. Like, I enjoy my job, and it, just like any other place, it's a job. It has its days. It's one of those things where I'm like, this isn't far-fetched, or this isn't out of your reach. So I try to kind of project that as much as I can to show other people, men or women. I've had a lot of people in high school or people in the military that are getting out of the military. They're like, hey, how do I go through to get my license and my tests done? So it's been a really unique ride, to say the least, especially making my page. I actually went to my boss initially. It was funny. I went to him and was like, hey, I have this idea. Like, what do you think? I just want to get the thumbs up and the green light before I do it. Because I know there can be like a liability issue. And he was like, okay. And I think at first he kind of thought like, yeah, like, sure, go ahead. I don't really. Well, then I think it was, I don't know if it was Labor Day or Memorial Day. It was last year or 2 years ago. And I posted a video, and I just posted it on TikTok because I have an Instagram and a TikTok, and it blew up. And the next day, one of our techs in California texted my boss and was like, hey, the girl that works with you at the main base just released this like video, and it was so cool. Like, tell her she's doing a great job. My boss is like, wait, what? He's like, well, did you send it to him? Do you know him? I'm like, nope. And he's like, how many doesn't like have a grasp of social media? And so he's like, well, like, how many people saw it? And I'm like 3 million. And he's like 3 million people. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't think he realizes like what I just got us into. But it's actually been awesome, because I told him at first, because I wear like helium in my videos, and I was like, hey, if you want, like, I'll make sure that like I don't catch our logo or any of the in numbers of the aircraft. Like, I'll try to keep it as discreet as possible. And then he actually got feedback from one of the manufacturers. They saw my video, and so the manufacturer themselves called my boss and was like, hey, like, you have a young tech, she's doing a great job. If she needs help, like, let us know. And my boss is like, well, now I can't let you not do it, because we're getting so much traction. So, thing where he was like, sure. He's like, show the logo, show the helicopters. He's like, and the CEO actually gave me the thumbs up and the green light and pulled me aside and was like, do you need help at all? I'm like, nope. I'm like, I got it. So it's, like I said, my inbox has been like, hey, like, what do you think about this school? Or, what would you suggest to tell my daughter? She's thinking about maybe going into tech school, or, just different things, which has been so cool. But yeah, it took off a lot faster than I thought it was going to. So, but it's been a really positive experience. So,
and I love your social media page. I think it's fantastic. Like, I really love your approach of education and showing people, because I think you're right. Like, most people have never thought about it. Like, I've been a technician for 24 years. I never thought about that side of things, that there were helicopter technicians. I don't know. It's just something you don't necessarily think about. And it sounds like from what you were saying too, like, if it's all older people that you're going to school with and who you're working with and all these, very paternal type folks, which is so awesome that you have that, but who's coming in to take over those jobs when they retire? And are you guys struggling to get people in the same way that the rest of the industry is? Like, I feel like your page is all about like education and getting people excited and showing that this exists as a world. And it's so very approachable. So I love what you're doing. Anybody who's watching, make sure you go check out her page, How to Helicopter. She's got little tips and tricks and just cool information about working on helicopters and what that whole thing looks like. So definitely go check her out. I think it's awesome. But do you find, or are you seeing that it is a struggle for the industry to find technicians on the helicopter side of things?
It's a huge issue, not just in helicopters, but actually in aviation. There are some jobs now that are actually hiring people with the promise to pay for their license, techs. And I know it's a kind of a rarity, but there's been so many people that are retiring. The big talk right now is that all of the baby boomers are retiring. And so everybody, and it's left a huge hole in aviation. And it's actually serious. So they've been talking about, especially with what's happened in light of recently, all the shutdowns and different things, that even has caused an even greater push for people to retire. So now, I forget where I read it. I'll have to find it and I can post it. It was about a year ago. I found an article that basically said by 2025 they were projecting 6 A&P positions for every A&P that was actually in the field. So yeah, like it's actually going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I don't know if that applied to pilots as well, but I know for a fact that was for technicians. And so that's why they're almost like giving some of these positions away, just like, hey, if you get in here, you don't have to have experience, you just have to have a good head on your shoulders. Or, hey, you don't have to have tools, we'll provide tools, like we just need somebody. And so some places are really starting to hurt for techs, and it's starting to show, which is great for us. Already exists where it's almost our responsibility now to kind of shine some light on what we do. Where, there's that much of a gap in the industry. So, but yeah, helicopters, I haven't noticed as much, just because what I do, like I said, is very niche, but I know there are a couple other companies that I was considering going to right out of school. And a lot of them were like, if you don't come, cool. Can you send anyone else our way? Like, do you know anybody else like that would like to do this or is interested in doing this? Like, a lot of the jobs that usually before you would have to move to and go there to do, and now they're like, you can live at home, we'll just ship you out and pay for your flights and your airfare, which is insane. Because a lot of people, I've actually got a couple good friends, and that's what they do. They live at home, but from week to week they'll ship them out to Oregon or California or a helicopter Dakota. So they're constantly on the airlines trying to get to these broken helicopters, and now you don't have to move across the country to work at this big kind of
you're starting to break up a little bit.
Sorry. Here, I'm gonna let him outside too.
You froze up a little bit there. So it sounds like what you're saying is there's a ton of opportunity for folks who are looking for where they want to go within the trades. Yes. It sounds like there's a huge amount of opportunity there.
Yeah, I've been super lucky, and like I knew that I wanted to travel in my position. I didn't want to do it all the time, which this job has been perfect for that because I literally have gotten to go places I've never been. So like I think it was 2 months ago, I actually got to go to Boston. And that was really cool. Last week I went to Cleveland. Next week I'm actually going to Detroit. So I get to see places that I wouldn't normally see, but it's not too much to where I'm always gone or something like that. Because there are positions where people, they're living out of a suitcase and they are constantly back and forth. I actually have a couple good friends that work in positions where they're actually overseas for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then they come home. Those are the very well-paid positions, but a lot of times it's really hard when you have a family, a puppy, whatever in life. So, but yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity and different angles you can really work to your own schedule, which is really unique. I know for most people, like I have the ability to work 410s, which is absolutely amazing. It's really cool. Some people I know, a good friend of mine, she works fire contracts. I think she works like 14 days on, and then off of fire season, she has 7 days off. But when she's not off of fire season, she has like 2 to 3. So it's just like, it's a crazy busy lifestyle, but it is well worth it. You get to see places, you get to travel, and some of the guys don't like flying as much as I do just because it's almost like redundant for them. But I'm one of those people that they're like, all right, who wants to go up? I'm like, I go up all the time. If no one wants to, I will. But
That's so awesome. It's so very cool to hear so much positivity and so much passion, like your love for what you do and the extent to which you share it with everybody and the reasons behind you doing that. Like, it's very obvious that you are full of love and passion for this, and I think it's just so cool to see how much positivity you've experienced throughout your journey, because it is not common, definitely on the automotive side, to hear stories like yours. So it's really cool to hear that. I lost her. What happened? We lost her. Let's see if I can get her back. How cool is she, guys? Like, literally, I love her story. I love how passionate she is about what she does. There you are. Oh, we lost you for a second.
I know. It's like, was it me?
That's all right. I just got to sing your praises for a couple of seconds while you were gone.
Oh, thank you.
Question for you. So, obviously on the auto mechanic side of things, there's no like certifications to work on cars. Anybody could hang a shingle and call themselves an auto mechanic. I'm assuming in helicopters, it looks a little bit different. You talked about licensing and certifications. What are the requirements there? I assume we don't want just anybody working on things that are, small cages flying in the sky.
Right. So there are a couple different things, a couple different avenues that you can take, but the license that you would need to work on aircraft, and that's any type of aircraft, helicopter, fixed wing, bush planes, cargo planes, military stuff, it's called an airframe and power plant license. So I usually kind of set it up for people that aren't familiar. Airframe, meaning almost like body work. So you have like auto body mechanics. They work on like the cosmetic portion. So that's airframe. And then power plant is the engine and everything associated. So sometimes people will just have their A and not their P. So A and P. But most people usually have both. So I went to school and I got certified in my airframe and in my power plant. So it's kind of a combo, but it basically means you can work on the helicopter in its entirety, from tip to toe, whether it's just changing a light bulb to completely doing a transmission swap to avionics to the landing gear, anything and everything goes pretty much. But that license essentially is a license to learn. So that license doesn't mean that you are like, if I got my license and I'm like, okay, like you can go touch a helicopter now. It allows me to learn how to work on helicopters.
Oh, interesting.
So
I like the way you say that. That's interesting. Is that how the industry in general refers to it, as a license to learn, or is that your
the good places. If you ever hear like a school or someone tells you it's a license to learn, that's usually a good place to go, because they are trying to teach you everything as best as they can and as open-minded, because they know that me and the kids sitting next to me are probably going to be in two different ends of the industry, and that this license will allow us to do that. But it basically shows you how to use the manuals, how to get familiar at an airport, how to get familiar with signing off paperwork. Something about aviation, there is a lot of paperwork involved in returning an aircraft to service. There is a lot of quality checks and assurance checks just to make sure that everything is the way it needs to be. Just because, like, if a car was to stop on the highway, that's about the extent of what would happen, versus if an airplane, the engine falls out of the sky, it's a little bit more of an issue. So there's a lot of legalities involved in basically learning how to cover yourself and how to make sure that you are doing everything by the book and doing everything the way that you should.
Right.
But a lot of times, if you go to a school and you're checking out a school and you're talking to these different professors or people or instructors, and they're basically setting you up to learn or how to navigate, that's what you're looking for. Because like I was saying, there's two different ways to get your A&P license. The first one is to do it the way I did. So you can go to school, you can take those classes, and you'll eventually test out in certain categories, just so that way they know that you've learned what you needed to learn.
Right.
Or get on-the-job training. So you can basically go, and I don't know how many hours it is, because I didn't do it that way, how many hours you have to log working on said aircraft. And what they will do is, once they think that you are good, someone that has the ability to will sign you off to say that you can go then take that test, and you can go get your A&P that way. So I actually, a friend coworker of mine, he actually just got his A&P this week, and he's kind of one of those unheard of cases, because he's worked on helicopters for 10 years. He didn't have his A&P. He worked almost as an apprentice, and then other people would just sign behind him, but he's never touched a fixed wing. He didn't know anything at all about like piston engines on aircraft. He'd only worked with turbines. And so it was just super funny, because he went to go take his test, and he's like, I'm learning about airplanes and landing gear, and I've never had to, and I'm like, I know it's like super overwhelming. I said, but I promise you, like, once you get back here, like, you know a lot more than you think you do from doing this long. And so it was funny, because he had like 10 years experience where I had experience, but it was just from like the manuals and for like the more broad spectrum. So when he met, we were working together, I'd be asking him questions, and he's like, wait, you don't know this? And I'm like, mm-mm. I'm like, nope. I'm like, at level 0 here with you. Like, I'm trying to work my way through. And so he was like, that's crazy, but you went to school. And I'm like, but I could go to the airlines right now, and I could also sit in a classroom, or work on the floor. And I might not know exactly what something is, but I'll know what it is that they're talking about, how to find the paperwork on it, how to find the schematics, how to look through it and walk through it. And he's like, that's so different than the way that I've approached it. I'm like, very different, but we're both in the same place. So, and I've been with him for about 2.5 years now, and he's like, how long it got you to get spooled up is crazy. Like, it took you like no time. And I'm like, the school preps me. I'm like, but you know helicopter tip to toe way better than I do, just because this is
right. Well, it's there's two different sides to it, right? There's the book training, and then there's the real world training, and ultimately you need both. It's just which one do you go after first, I guess, and which path winds up being easier for you.
Right. And most people, I feel like, end up going the way that I did, just because it is a lot harder to get your foot in the door at those places. They want to know what you're doing, and want to make sure that you have the interest, because they're investing a lot in you to basically send you to get your A&P or work on these aircraft. And like I said, there's a lot of legality issues that can be involved, just because you have to sign everything off. Even me just swapping out like a bolt or just a fitting, there has to be paperwork on it. I have to have a serial number. I have to have everything like coded, written down. Come here. And so But yeah, you get used to it. It's a little bit frustrating sometimes because I'm like, I have to do all this paperwork for something that's so simple and something that, is just, it shouldn't take this long, but it's just part of it and you get used to it. But in automotive, someone would be like, hey, change these brakes. I'm like, here's the part, here's my tools, here's everything. Like, cool, done. But when it came to this, I'm like, okay, what's the serial number on your torque wrench? You have to write that in your logbook entry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much paperwork.
Interesting. Even the tool that you're using.
If it is a calibrated tool, yes.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Now,
But, yeah,
is the A&P license, is that the same license regardless of which area you go into? So you're kind of getting a foundation in all aviation
yes.
tech? Okay.
Yep. So if I wanted to, I could go work for the airlines. I could go work for like a fire helicopter contract. I could go work for like on bush planes in Alaska. I could even work on hang gliders. I could work on just like odd and end, anything that flies. Actually
Awesome.
kind of odd too. I don't know how much truth that there is to this, but I've also heard that for some positions you have to have an A&P. So actually a lot of NASCAR, I guess technicians have an A&P, and I don't know if that's due to the aerodynamics. If someone on here knows more about that, but and then
interesting. I've not heard that, but interesting.
I don't know, and I would think maybe due to the aerodynamics of the car. I'm not entirely sure, and I've also heard roller coasters. And it might just be one of those things that people are like, they say that, you know what I mean, or it's something
right.
Knows
anybody in the audience know the answer to this?
Right, but it's just everybody always used to tease or joke about, like, yeah, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna go work for Kyle Busch. I'm like, oh my gosh.
So, I've got a couple of questions in the question mark area that I wanted to ask you. So there was one person who asked, they said they're getting their A&P. They're interested in going to go into helicopters. They wanted to know how difficult it is to get a job. So I know we talked about how like scarce technicians are who work on helicopters and how they're struggling to find people. What was specifically your experience like? It sounded like you had multiple offers and multiple places you could have gone. How quickly did you get hired out of school?
So right after school, I was actually while I was still in school, I was working kind of odds and ends jobs just to kind of float me while I was in college. In the restaurant, I ended up went out of business. And so I was like, okay, I have an opportunity now. My schedule's opened up. I'm going to see if I can't find something that's aviation related as a part-time job. So I actually put in a couple applications back home at a local airport, and I think a couple actually local airports. And I was like, hey, like I'm looking to get some experience. I said, whether that's washing a plane, answering phones, I said fueling them, whatever you need. I said just to kind of float some cash, but also it would look good, kind of familiarize me even further with an airport. And so I put in an application, and they're such a small airport. They were like, no, we don't have a use for that right now, but can we keep your resume? And I said, absolutely. I said, I'm in school. This is what I'm training for. I know it's kind of far-fetched. And they were like, okay, cool. Well, they called me back about 2 weeks later, and they're like, hey, there's actually a very, very small helicopter outfit not far from here. And they fly very small helicopters, and they train people how to become private pilots in them. And they said, we gave your resume to them. If you'd like, I think he was going to make maybe some type of opportunity for you to work part-time. You probably wouldn't be doing anything crazy, but so while I was in school, I was actually working on helicopters just a little bit, nothing too crazy. I mean, a lot of times it was the odds and ends jobs, and sometimes just washing it or fueling it, or just learning about it and trying to help the pilots out with their daily inspections. And that helped tremendously, and I had no experience. I basically was like, hey, I'm in school. I can't even show you a piece of paper that says I'm done yet or anything else.
Right.
You're going to for it. And they were all super cool. They were like, of course, like if you have a friend that doesn't even go to A&P school and would be interested in fueling or washing your craft or this or that. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I worked for them until I got out of school. And when I got out of school, a lot of the job offers I had local were not helicopter, just because a lot of medical helicopter places
want you to have experience before you get hired on. But a lot of times it's not as much of a want as it is a need. So a lot of times it's in their contract, like you cannot work for us unless you have worked for another helicopter company for at least 3 years. Oh. So usually any helicopter that's associated with medical or like doctors, hospitals, anything like that, just because they already have a liability transporting patients.
Sure.
So I looked at a bunch of those and they said, as soon as you get your experience, call us. But right now we can't do anything for you. So I wanted to do helicopters, but I was like, okay, I have to find something. So whether or not it's helicopters and I find my way later, I actually applied at Boeing here in St. Louis. I applied at Airbus Helicopters, which is down in Mississippi. I applied, I think it was a shop that had helicopter and fixed wing that was down in Mesa, Arizona. There was a couple different places that I applied, kind of all over the place, but all of them called back, which was super reassuring. And they were like, hey, like, we don't require any type of, degree or any type of background. You have your A&P, and that's already more than most people. We'll train you when you get here. And so a lot of them were super cool, made a lot of offers, but I was so hell-bent on helicopters. I was like, I'm gonna do something. And so the guy that I worked for part-time said, hey, I know this isn't like something that you want to do here for the rest of your life. Like, he's like, you've got a lot of potential. Do you mind if I give your resume to a company that I work for on the side? And I said, absolutely. And so, which was the company I work for now. And so he gave me a call and was like, hey, such and such said that you were interested. Would you like to come in? We can talk to you, kind of see how much you know. And I said, well, I took helicopters. I took a course in helicopters for a full year. I said, I know the nomenclature. I'm actually certified in field maintenance and different things. And they're like, okay, yeah, like, they're like, that's already more than most A&Ps. But I could have gotten a job without the helicopter experience, just about any of the places that I applied myself to as well. But the helicopter experience that I got at SIU is the only reason that I got into HeliInc. So had I not had that helicopter experience, I probably would have been at Boeing. I maybe would have even moved down to Mississippi. I contemplated that. They actually were looking at me before they even knew I had helicopter experience. So once they found that out, they were like, okay, cool. But that seems to be the common theme. I've got a lot of people that have asked me, like, hey, I work for a manufacturer. Hey, I work for a small, like, mom and pop shop. I fix people's small piston planes, how can I do what you do? And literally, as long as you can get your hands on something, even if it's part-time or it's not doing exactly what you want to do, it helps. And it helps me tremendously. I was making like less than minimum wage working on these helicopters, just helping them out. But the fact that I was able to say, yeah, I know how to fuel it. Yeah, I know what this is. I know how to take the interior out. I know how to do this, that. I know how to climb up on it and do everything I need to do, or how to get around. And they were like, that's already a lot more than most people. Like, come on in. Like, well, we'll give you a chance and see how this works out. So I just try to tell people, if you can familiarize yourself on more than one aircraft, you already look valuable. So even if it's not a helicopter, because some people work at a training facility and they only work on little Cessna 172s. So the little small fixed wing you kind of hear whenever they're flying over real loud. There's like a training school and they'll have like 15 of them or something, and you're working on the same aircraft. That's good. And you're familiarizing yourself with that aircraft. But if you can say, yeah, I worked on a Cessna, 172, or I worked on a Piper, I worked on this, I worked on that. If you can kind of show that you can bounce around, or that you are malleable enough to learn all these different things, like they definitely are like, okay, you're trainable and you have the license to be trained. Like, let's give this a shot. So, but that is what helped me tremendously, was just was showing interest in doing different things. And I was very active in school as well, and tried to get involved as much as I could, just because I wanted those doors to be open, because there are so many cool people in aviation. I can't tell you how many times people would be like, hey, like, I had a guy, it was in, I think it was at the Women in Aviation conference, which is a really cool conference that they hold every year. I went a couple years ago and I actually got a tool scholarship, which is where I got all of my tools that I have now. Um,
Nice.
but there was a gentleman and he was so nice and he was like, hey, I have a helicopter training outfit. It's in Colorado. It's kind of hard to get to. He said, but every year I sponsor a scholarship and I train someone from start to finish on how to get their helicopter private pilot's license. He
Huh.
said, I don't advertise it really just because I get a lot of people that I just think are kind of trying to woo me on paper. He said, but you really seem like a raw person, like you really are interested and this is your passion. He said, if you can find your way out here and you can stay here for 3 to 4 weeks, we could at least get you enough stick time to where you could almost finish. And I was like, man, and I was in a position where I was still in school and I was trying to figure out where I was going to move for work. And he said, if you can't, he's like, here's my card. Maybe later down the road, like, you know, one day we'll cross paths again. And it's so weird how small the aviation industry is, especially helicopters themselves. And I've seen all these people in like passing or at different events or like safety sessions and seminars and different things. And just how many people you kind of brush elbows with is just, it's insane how you come across them again. And it's a really tight-knit community, but everybody loves what they do enough that they're willing to help out the next person. And it's just a really cool family-oriented industry. And I try to like explain that to people too. I'm like, it's not a dog eat dog. Like, it's not like
No, it doesn't sound like it at
I
all.
pictured it to be. I was blown away. I've even tried to get my family. I tell my dad, I'm like, take flight lessons. You should do it. Let's go do it. I'm like,
I don't know. I'm listening to you. Like, I want to go switch gears and go to helicopters. Like, it sounds like such an amazing industry and such an amazing environment. And I think you're just such a testament to, like, if you have the passion for it and you're willing to put yourself out there and get the experience and be persistent, like, how successful you can be. But gosh, the opportunities and the energy, like the culture that you're describing sounds so amazing. Like, I want to switch gears. I'm going to leave cars. I'm going to go work on helicopters. This sounds awesome.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, seriously, like, give it a chance. Or if people seem like they're kind of discouraged, which at the Women in Aviation conference every year, you get to meet all kinds of different women that are in aeronautics. There are women that were astronauts. You meet like people of all walks. Anything that flies goes, essentially. And some of these old ladies that I've met that are from like World War II era, or were like part of the WASPs, or like just different like flying units. I'm like, man, you guys are so cool. Like, you guys didn't know you were cool at the time, but you are so cool. It's so cool to meet all of these different people and how they're just very uplifting. Even if it's something, if aviation's not your thing or whatever, if there's ever a Women in Aviation conference near you, just go. It is one of the coolest things ever.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of opportunity to get into aviation as well. So if you check out WAI.org, there are a lot of scholarship opportunities. So I was talking about the one I got my tools. I actually was, I was a senior. No, I was a junior. I was a junior when I got that scholarship. And so in the A&P program, they basically tell you like, hey, you need to have like these tools. We understand that you could be working on this or that, and you don't want to get too kind of zoned in on the tools that you buy, and tools are expensive. So they basically said, you need a generic set of hand tools. This is what we recommend. And so it's funny, I actually had a couple buddies of mine that were in the flight program, but they were taking the A&P program on the side because they eventually wanted to own their own aircraft. So their goal was to be a pilot, but they wanted to have that accessibility to work on their own little aircraft if they decided to own one. So a lot of them were like, well, like, this isn't what I'm going to do. I don't want to buy a whole tool set and, you know, the whole nine. And so I was like, hey, how about we make a little community box and we'll all work out of it. We have different classes at different times. And so we worked out of this tiny little toolbox for, I think, like 2-3 years. And I applied to a Women in Aviation scholarship. And the woman that called me that had to tell me that I won, she had worked for American Airlines for, I think, like 30 years or something crazy. And she was one of the coolest ladies I've ever met. And I still actually text her from time to time and I send her pictures, and she's just an awesome, inspirational lady. And she was like, hey, this is the situation, this is the scholarship. She goes, I didn't put it in, I guess, the letterhead and like in the actual description of the scholarship, but I would like to fly you to the conference this year, and we're going to pay for your hotel room, and we're going to pay for your conference fees. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm like, I go back to freak out. I'm like, no way, this is so much more than just pause out on me. Ooh, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. I think maybe the Wi-Fi is not being so well behaved. But we actually, I don't know if you looked at the time, like we have like already like gone well beyond our hour, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface. You are so incredible. I think between the lagging and the time, we should probably let everybody go and wrap this up. But you're fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. I absolutely love your passion. I love your energy. Everybody out there, if you're looking for opportunities, like clearly A&P helicopters, there's a ton of opportunity, and a really, really supportive environment is everything that I'm hearing from this. You're clearly going to go very far in your career. You've got the right attitude and the right perspective. I normally end with this question, and so I want to ask you real quickly, and if you can do a short-ish answer. If you had an opportunity to go back in time and give yourself some advice, the younger you, the little girl out there thinking that they might want to do work in any sort of trades, what is your advice to them or to yourself?
You're never too young. There is literally something for everybody at all ages. And getting into this, I kind of wish I had a family member or someone that could have helped steer me. We do flights for Girl Scouts. We do Women in Aviation Day. There's Girls in Aviation Day. If you look at airports near you, I've even like searched stuff on Facebook before, like events near me, like pertaining to airports. They even have car shows at airports. So they'll have fly-ins. And so it's literally like planes lined up, cars lined up. Like there is literally something for everybody. Kind of like the car industry. Like you have the people that do like, you know, like the hot rods. You have people that do like the low riders. Like there's like little groups and like little cliques. There's so much cool stuff. Yeah. And aviation is like that too. And there's literally something for everybody, and there's something for everybody at all ages. So if this is something that interests you, it's not far-fetched. You can do it. Your grandma can do it. Your neighbor can do it. There's really something for everybody. And I 10 out of 10 would recommend looking into this industry. Not even just helicopters, just aviation as a whole.
I love it.
Fantastic. And I've tried to project that and try to tell other people about it. But
well, you don't just try, you succeed. Overwhelmingly, you succeed. I think your message is fantastic. You're doing an amazing job. It makes sense, 100% sense to me that your boss and the CEOs of these helicopter companies are saying, yes, absolutely, keep doing what you're doing, because you're putting a really great name out there for aviation and for helicopters and the industry as far as being a technician. So keep doing what you're doing. You're phenomenal. I'm going to have to let everybody go, but you and I are going to keep in touch because you're a badass, and I've had so much fun getting to know you and hear about your story and hear about and see your passion for what you do. So, and yeah, somebody just said they love how well you speak. You're incredibly well spoken, incredibly passionate. You are wise beyond your years. So thank you. Thank you so much for saying yes and joining me for tonight. For everybody who's watching, she dropped a ton of knowledge, a ton of information. Make sure you go back and watch this again. Definitely make sure you go follow her on How to Helicopter. She gives away a ton of information, ton of useful tidbits. And obviously, as she said, any questions that you guys have, reach out to her. She seems like she's absolutely willing to help people out and be a part of their journey as well. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you, Faith, for hanging out with me and sharing all of your incredible perspectives and words of wisdom. So thank you so much. Everybody who's watching, have a fantastic rest of your week. Be good to yourselves, be good to one another, and we will see you next week to meet another awesome trades lady.